order. Gail, do we have a roll call?
Sure. Tyler.
Here.
Jeff.
Yep.
John.
Here.
Deb.
Here.
Andrew.
Here.
We're all here tonight.
All right. Just a second, I'm sorry, I'm pulling this up. Okay, can we have an approval of the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Second. Okay, any further discussion? I'm going to remove, Adam has to get out early, see his son. I'm sorry, that's more detail than I should have shared. So we're going to let old business, we're going to have Adam give his spiel during old business, or before old business, and then we will go ahead and take action in the regular slot, but that will allow him to leave unless we're ahead of schedule. Okay. Anybody here for a public forum that would like to address the board? Okay. Looks like we have Mr. Hackett. Thank you very much for coming back. Just a little bit of background. So we were approached a couple months ago, let's just say, about a project, Storycom, where they are trying to build and ensure that we have 911 coverage throughout Story County, actually.
Correct. It's the two-way radio system that we use when we respond and while we're on scene. So it's separate, a separate piece from the 911 telephone service.
Okay.
It's
the two-way call.
Yeah, it's the two-way communications that we would have between the responders in the field, the dispatch center, and the other responders coming in or leaving the scene.
Okay. And we had a joint meeting with the city of Gilbert and your committee, as well as the school board, just to discuss that. Obviously, that's a very important capability within our district and our town. And we had some concerns about whether our site, our land, which I think was a proposed spot, maybe fit the bill. And you guys had agreed that you were going to go out and look for other spots. And I think we were just hoping, and thank you very much, you agreed to come back to talk to us with maybe an update.
Sure.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect.
Yeah, so I'm not sure, Jeff, are you new on the board? Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, so my name's Tom Hackett. I'm a deputy chief with the Ames Fire Department. I'm also a Franklin Township resident, live in Squaw Valley. I've got 3 kids that come to the district here, that attend the district as well. So I'm very familiar with the district and the operations, and once again, I appreciate your time having me come in and give you an update. I appreciate the time in the past talking with you guys as well. We continue to move forward. The overall plan for the radio system, which was badly in need of upgrade, involves 5 sites, 5 towers throughout Story County. So there's 4 other towers that we've locked down to locations. One of those is in the city of Nevada at the Justice Center. One is in the city of Ames, ISU's Wallace Hall. Another one is on some farm property that is in the McCallsburg-Ziering area. And then the 4th site is on property that's actually, it's a farm property, but it's owned by the Collins-Maxwell School District between Cambridge and Maxwell. So those are the other 4 sites. And then the 5th site is one that was originally in the design, in the proposal from Raycom, and Raycom is the vendor who is building the system for us. In their proposal, they had looked into, or they placed the site at the Gilbert Middle School. And so we took some motion, came to you guys, spoke with the superintendent, trying to determine if that is a feasible option, and that's kind of where we ended up with our first conversation. And I certainly understand the concerns that you raised. We did go back and we've looked at some additional alternative sites as well. We don't have one locked down yet. We don't have a signed lease agreement yet. We went pretty far down the process of evaluating and putting a design together for the Iowa State University Horticulture Farm. That looked promising when we were touring the site in our initial conversations with Iowa State University. And unfortunately, there's some disagreement on whether the Storycom tower, because it's not an Iowa State University solely owned property, because the tower itself is not owned by Iowa State University, whether that tower would fall under the county zoning ordinances or whether it would fall under the state zoning ordinances. And unfortunately, we couldn't come to any agreement between the county and the state on which way that should proceed. So we've again started talking with some additional landowners, started looking at some properties. We have some tight geographical areas that we're trying to work within because of the way that this site fits in with the other 4 sites as well. We can't just pick any land within 5 miles. We have to kind of bring it down to within a half mile or a mile of that proposed location, which is not as easy as saying just a half mile circle or a 1 mile circle around it. The ground topography, any tall buildings that might be in the path as we move this tower one direction or another, if the co-op blocks the microwave path between this tower and one of the other towers, say the Wallace Hall Tower, then that would cause complications with the system and would allow or force that to communicate around that microwave path. It just wouldn't be as efficient. So that's kind of where we've expanded out. We've looked at some different areas. I will say that we are currently actively negotiating with the landowner. So we have a willing landowner that has property in between the horticulture farm and the Gilbert properties. We had a conversation. I had a conversation with that landowner this morning as well. So they're still willing to go forward with the project. One of the risks and the benefits, one of the reasons that Raycom specifically looks at government properties, school properties, is the low cost option of it, because generally for a public safety system, if we work with other government partners, a lot of times that the tower can be on a low cost lease, either free, $1 a year, something that just makes up for any increased costs and maintenance to the overall property. So that's one of the reasons that Raycom chose the Gilbert sites. That's kind of what they focus in on first, because that's generally the least expensive option. When you start looking at private landowners, you start to talk about what's their income potential, both on the property before we approach them, and then what's their income potential, their income for the tower site, leasing the site to us for a tower. So with the landowner that we're currently negotiating with, it does come with a cost. And that's the part that we're still negotiating. So I don't have a final cost to you. The leases that we have out there are all public record. Everybody can see what those are. The lease that we have with Collins Maxwell School District, because it's a farm property that Collins Maxwell schools use to offer scholarships for their students, so they cash rent the property and then use that income for scholarships, which is how it was willed to them by the previous landowners. It was willed to them with that express purpose to use it for scholarships for their students, and that's what they're doing with it. So we're making up for that cash rent, as well as a little bit of the inconvenience for the property there, and the inconvenience to the farmer that's got a farm around it as well. So that's a $1,500 per year lease that we have with Collins Maxwell. Our private landowner lease in the Ziering-McCallsburg area is a little bit higher than that. It's a $5,000 a year lease. And one of the reasons for that is because we are also competing in that area with wind turbines as well. So there's several wind turbines in the area, and this landowner specifically also has a wind turbine on his property, so he's very familiar with those leases and those costs and the income from that. So unfortunately, that did drive us up a little bit higher with the lease cost as well. And the negotiation with our current landowner for this tower site, again, we haven't settled on anything. We're in between there. So our initial offer was the $1,500. They've done their homework. They've come back to us with an offer of $5,000. I don't know where we're going to end up, if we're going to end up below that if we're going to end up at that 5,000. But it does come with a cost. I did also factor in what that means for Gilbert, for the Gilbert Fire Department, because the ongoing operating costs of this system are going to be spread among all the radio users throughout the county. Those operating costs to maintain the system, the lease agreements, then get spread out between every radio that's on the system. And right now, with all the radio orders that we've received, with how we're proceeding forward, it looks like to be about 1,277 radios total on the system. So if we were to end up with the $5,000, we're looking at an increased cost, and that gets passed on as a yearly cost to all the users per radio. And when you really break it down, it only ends up being about $3 and I believe it's $3.16 per radio per year. And for the Gilbert Fire Department that has ordered 26 radios, they're looking at an annual budget increase for them about $100 a year, specifically for a $5,000 cost on the tower site. So to give you an update, that's basically where we are with the tower sites. We're still talking. I just want you guys to be aware of what all that means, where we're sitting. It's not a done deal yet, but it looks promising. I know when we met with you guys in the city, you posed it to us to keep looking and come back if we can't find anything. We're not there yet. We are still communicating with this willing landowner. Hopefully we come to terms and we can reach an agreement, but we're continuing to explore other options as well.
I know it was thrown out in the lagoons. The city threw that out at one point. I didn't know that, obviously.
It is, and it's unfortunately it's just not a very preferential site to us. There isn't, as we did some research in it, there isn't anything that tells us that it's impossible to build there. There were a lot of questions that we raised that we would have to do some additional research. One of the concerns that we have we've also got a consulting company, Mission Critical Partners, that's helping us through this process as well. And they have some experience with a tower site in the Houston area that's on some sewer treatment property. And one of the risks that they've mentioned is they see about a half the life of their electronic equipment in that area than they do for their other towers, which is something that does concern us. But.
Thank you for coming back and talking to us. You're exactly right. We just left with, I don't think that we're just because of the makeup and the usage of the land, we weren't quite sure that we were the best place for it, but certainly we understood the importance and want to support the capability. So appreciate that you're going around and finding that, and thank you for the update.
Yeah.
I guess we'll be in touch, right, if we need to be, but.
Absolutely.
Thoughts? No?
Any time frame? I mean, just from when do you think you'll have, 30 days?
Well, we're trying to lock it down as quickly as possible. One of the concerns that we're kind of getting to the point now where we're about at the end of our timeline to meet the overall project goal. The construction of the tower sites, one of our problems is we can't have a final design until we lock down the site. So we wouldn't have a exact tower height, angle of the antennas. All that has to happen before, or we have to have the site locked in before we start doing that design work. We're still on track to hopefully have the construction done this summer, do our acceptance testing early fall. One of the other considerations that we have to give is the acceptance testing has to occur when the leaves are still on the trees. To test when the trees are bare, it can give us some false positives that during the winter the radio might work fine, but once the trees leave out, then we could have some communication problems. So we want to make sure that we're doing that acceptance testing before the leaves come out of the trees. So we're getting pretty close to our timeline. We want to lock something down as quickly as we can. That's where we are. We haven't delayed the project or anything.
Deb, I see two city council members.
Yeah, what's the
sitting out
city
there.
say?
Can we ask Gilbert
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Jamie Miller with
Gilbert City Council. Is the school board willing to put forth the piece of property so that the commission can at least, I mean, is that an option for them? Or where are you with that? Because we've offered, actually with the lagoon, it may not be the best suitable spot, but from my understanding with the commission, it's difficult for them to maybe even try to progress forward without knowing if that option is there, if the negotiation with the landowner that they're dealing with now falls through. So I mean, do we wait until that falls through, 2 months down the road, or do they have some type of ability to at least know that it is an option from the school board?
So where were they going to put it here, Lindsay?
It's going to be north of the middle school and closer, I think, to the gravel road out here. That was debatable where that was going to be.
I think some of the question was about easements and where can we put it? Because where it was proposed was a little corner from the middle school field. And I don't think we were quite clear, and we still don't have, as far as I'm aware, the ruling on that. What is Story County going to allow, right? Is this going to be in the middle of our middle school field or truly in the corner? So to answer your question, we haven't voted. There is no proposal like that yet. We would have to get some more facts and put that.
I don't see why the city and us couldn't work together on it, though.
We just have to.
It's difficult for us. We are willing to make any kind of zoning changes and to progress forward with those zoning changes to facilitate it. But in order for them to do that, we don't know where what the options are going to be. We've already taken steps to incorporate the remainder of the lagoon property into the city limits, which will allow us to facilitate some zoning issues there if that is viable option. I think according to Chief Hackett, that's probably the lower rung of the ladder as far as option spots. So
You have a lot of salt water sprayed down there?
I don't think there's any salt water
Okay.
spray, but you got a lot.
I would bet that would be Houston's problem.
Well, there's a lot of.
Yeah.
There certainly could be some
Yeah.
alternative,
Houston's problem.
We have to deal with some of the DNR regulations because of the lagoon issue that's governed by a lot of DNR laws and rules. So I guess that's kind of the city's. I mean, we're willing to make some changes if it necessitates that. If there is a spot, whether it be, I don't think the northwest corner, which was originally proposed as the middle school property, is viable because of the setbacks with the road issue there. But I think the northeast corner, from what we've kind of looked at, would probably be a very acceptable spot because it's not that far away from the original location. And I mean, I know the city would take steps to see that it would fit.
I think that's pretty accurate on our joint committee meeting that we had, right? There were some safety concerns raised and more of the specific location. My understanding from the board was we said, well, if there can be another site in the city, lagoon or otherwise, please explore it. If not, come back. My personal opinion as a board member would be, well, do we want to explore the northeast corner of the middle school? I'd say yes. I'd say yes, especially if the city said there'll be some pretty, we can move forward with the zoning or whatever requirements are needed, and then maybe even go back to the cell tower, because that, my understanding from that joint committee is that could potentially be combined. So I think there is an opportunity.
Is that something the city would want to look at?
As far as what Jeff was saying.
Moving that other corner?
I think that's probably from the logistical standpoint, and Frank, you can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's probably a lot more viable than the northwest.
We do.
It's been, that cell tower, can you give us an update on the cell tower contract?
The U.S. Cellular one?
Yeah.
That has been stopped. That was voted down because of the variances from the city.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I'm asking if the city would go forward, then that could be.
That had to kick out
That could be
for zoning.
Yeah, I'd be all about that.
I think-
That you guys are.
So this is public forum.
Right.
So I think that it's, I think of course, another joint meeting might be exactly what's in
Yeah,
order
exactly.
to do this. We can put an agenda, put this on the.
Are you
agenda,
interested in
talk
that
about-
location?
We would certainly look at it, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
That was, yeah,
I
that
mean,
was part of
we would
it.
be interested. We recognize that that there could be some increased upfront costs as to what we're planning would likely have a longer access drive to get there, a longer run of utilities. But we would hope that we can trade off maybe the upfront cost with less expensive annual payment. Obviously, that's something that.
Tom, do we have to do anything? I didn't mean to interrupt, I'm sorry. Do we need to do anything? I know, and again, we're running public forum, so we're just talking. But landowners that are adjacent to us, do we have to get approvals there too? Or, because we're going to put a tower up, God forbid something would happen and that tower would come down? Because I know that that was some of the talk. Is that still the case?
So we would certainly reach out to all the neighbors around, let them know what the plans are, try to be as good a neighbor as we can.
Sure.
I recognize that there would be a certain number of people that would just be unhappy with the construction regardless. The approvals, we wouldn't necessarily need a neighbor to approve the tower location. Although we'd have to work with the city, and if there's any variance that would need to be accomplished from that, we want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence there as well, and not bringing a proposal forward that we assume would be voted down.
Yeah, so I would propose that we take this off. Thank you for your feedback. And we will work offline to set up a joint meeting where we can talk about whether that's a proposed solution. Well, thank you for coming. I'm not sure that we had that kind of communication. I'm very happy to hear that from the city. That was not some of the communication we had heard prior to that, so awesome. Sounds like we might be able to.
I will just mention as far as the cellular side of things. So if Storycom were to build the tower and then offer space on the tower for a cellular company, that is something that would have to go before the Storycom board. It's as we've designed and built this out, we've really done it as a public safety aspect without any additional sources of income. We're trying to make money off of the tower, the available space on the tower. So that's certainly something that the Storycom board would have to discuss and decide if they're prepared to offer space and what that would mean for Storycom overall.
Okay.
But am I correct, Tom, in that when we brought that up at that joint committee, it's at least feasible, right? Not necessarily to be approved, but it's
right.
feasible.
It's technically possible.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's certainly feasible. It's just whether or not our board, the Storycom board, would be acceptable.
Chief, just real quick, and just for clarification, I know time is of the essence on this. What's a timeline that you guys are looking at getting a shovel in the ground somewhere?
We'd like to start doing some soil sampling. Really, we would like to have done it before the ground froze. We know that with the warm temperatures earlier, we might have a little bit of a chance to still get through that. But if we can really lock something down by the end of this month, that will be in our best interest.
Time's of the essence.
Absolutely.
Okay. We will take this offline, like I said. I appreciate that. And we will get that set up. We can work with, I'm sorry, why am I pointing at you as if that's your job? But we will work I didn't mean that, yeah. So we will work with Sonia, right? And then we'll set it up, sign a meeting so that we can get together.
That sounds great.
Have this discussion.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're a little bit off track, or a little timing-wise here. Just 20 minutes, yeah, so let's move on to oral reports, administrator reports. Are we gonna do this before? Do you want to do this before oral business, or should we let Adam go first?
That's up to you.
You can do it.
Let's let Adam, because that took quite a bit longer than I thought.
Go ahead,
Let's
Adam.
let Adam do his report. So we will go down to, it's actually 7.01. You'll give your oral report or whatever on that oral report.
So progress narrative is up on the screen now. So the two additions that are still outstanding, the middle school south addition and the high school west. Essentially all of the work is done in those locations. Furniture was installed, I'll say 95% complete last week. There is still some odds and ends, it sounds like, on the furniture, either stuff was damaged or stuff was missing. All the contractors right now are completing punch list items throughout all the locations. So middle school, north, south, as well as the high school additions. The bleachers, they slowly continue to install the bleachers. The press boxes are set to be next for installation. The scoreboards are there. They're waiting for the ground to freeze. They tried to get out there a couple times and just couldn't make it with their truck.
Question for you, Adam, on
Yeah.
the fields. What's the status of the fields themselves? I walked out there just to see if they're, I mean, they're gonna need more work,
So,
not just seeding, right?
yeah, technically they have like 8 days to finish. That's all it'll take. So everything you see that's out there,
Yeah.
8 days.
On the ground,
The grounds, the fence,
because it's really
the
rough.
infield,
It's really
everything,
rough,
yeah. They'll laser grade again. They had done it once.
Okay.
They'll laser grade again.
Okay.
And then, once the paving's done out, they'll come in and backfill and do the rest of that grading. So, there might be a little bit more than 8 days. 8 days was just for the field construction, the fences, the
Right.
backstops, the cages. Construct in some concrete, we'll have some additional time.
And grass, spring, fall, spring. No,
Spring.
right.
Yep.
But our plan would be that we're not looking at playing on that
Correct.
for this season
Correct.
because of getting the grass to, some of the things that Tyler just mentioned.
Yep.
You got to get this so that it's level, that it's flat, and we got to get the grass to grow.
Correct.
And
The standard grass is the most important
Right,
thing to get
yeah,
done, so.
right.
Yep.
That's good.
So that's the progress update. Budget summaries updated. We're still carrying about $140,000 worth of contingency. We do have a meeting the 23rd with administrators to review their list of stuff, and we'll then meet and bring together some options there.
And so you usually do this, but so 87?
Yeah, so overall, construction by bid package contractors were 93.8, so about 94%. Overall construction's about 97, 96. Well, sorry, 93, I guess. I'm looking at the wrong one.
And 87%.
Yep, and then 87% of contingencies used. Overall, about 91%. Truthfully, most of that's the athletic field that will be hanging out there until.
And Adam, I had a chance to talk to Brian and Charlie today.
Mhm.
It sounds like, well, maybe Hala's involved in this too. It sounds like there's going to be a push to make sure that the 20th, when we don't have school with kids,
Correct.
there's going to be a push to make sure that those punch lists are as close to being finished as possible.
Correct. You'll see the most activity that day just because everybody can get into the spaces that aren't occupied at the time
Right.
to try to get done.
Because that's what
As much as
our
they can.
ultimate goal for everyone is, that we get this done
Yep.
and the punch lists are done.
Yep.
And we
Get
go.
going, get out. I guess the only other item on the agenda here are the change orders that have previously been approved. These are just updates to the formal document to increase contract.
Okay. Any questions that anybody has for Adam?
That's good.
Thanks,
If we
Mike.
think about him when that comes up. Oh,
I'm
did you
just
have
saying,
one?
well, I just thanks to Mike and Vic for offering to let us come and walk
Yeah.
through too. That
Thank
was
you, guys.
that was nice.
That was
Very
amazing.
nice.
Yes, very amazing. Did we get the different color cabinets in yet?
Not yet.
Spring break.
Spring break.
Unfortunately,
You get the ugly color in.
they're not quick. They don't
Just
have
find
them
that just
stock
in
sitting
here.
on the
Yeah.
shelf, yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Adam.
Yep.
So we'll go back up to oral reports and then use what Adam had shared with us when we go on to new business. Okay, first up, we have 501 administrator reports. Iowa statewide assessment of student progress. Carrie?
That is me. Gail, there's one for everybody and one for you as well in there, and Lindsay as well. To go over a ton of stuff with you.
in 5 minutes? Is that what you
No,
said?
that's what I'm not gonna do.
Okay.
But what I am going to do, and Gail has this, so she'll upload this into the doc or into the board thing as well, and then I will put that on me. I went back and forth as to how to, what exactly to include for all of you. So what you'll see at the front is you're gonna see cut score ranges for the for the performance levels. They have 3 performance levels, just like they've had in the past. They have advanced, proficient, and not yet proficient. And on there, you're going to see, I see Andrew's looking at it, and Deb has one in her hand. You've got grade levels 3 through 11, all of there, and they're back to back. Now, the thing to know is that, first of all, we only do science in 3 grades, grades 5, 8, and 11. Or no, 5, 8, and 10, I'm sorry. But when our students are taking those science, they're really looking at the grade span standards. So 5th grade, you're doing 3, 4, 5. 8th grade, you have 6, 7, 8 standards. 10th is a little different. 10th grade, they are really touching on all high school standards. There isn't just like 10th grade standards. It's encompassing all those standards. So when you look at that, I think our kids did really well, but this is not a deep dive. This is just a kind of a brief overview for you to see what that looks like. I think one of our biggest takeaways as we looked at just our school achievement level summaries is, number 1, first year of taking it, and all the hubbub that we heard, we were not disappointed in our scores. One thing that we did notice though is we did see a little flip between proficient and advanced. We had, our goal will now be to how can we move kids out of not yet proficient into proficient, but move some proficient into that more advanced level. In the past, we've had lots more information that we can dig into when we had the Iowa assessments. We don't have that much information right now, this being so new. And I'm not trying to pass the buck on that. It just is what it is at this point. You will see after all of these grade level things, you're going to see a 1-pager that is backed. And those of you that have students, you would have received this in the mail. Those of you that don't have students grades 3 through 11, this is new information. And this is straight from the ISAS gurus as to what that looked like that parents got sent home. We sent, after conferences, right before break, we sent this 1-pager along with a letter that just explained it and student scores. I received 1 phone call that asked for just more of clarification. It wasn't even about their score. It was just, I want to have, how come my student who's a 10th grader didn't take 10th grade science? And I said, well, actually, because these are the scores from last year, your student will take science this year. That was the only question. And we purposely put on here that we didn't want we wanted that question to come higher than going to the classroom teacher, because we're looking at scores from the previous year. We are not happy that we got them so late. And so for us to say we're going to make huge instructional shifts from this, that's really an unfair thing to say to teachers at this point. But what we are doing is we took, teachers have seen exactly what you've seen, and then you're going to see these comparison graphs between, those are, Mr. Beecher had scores from the Raccoon Conference, and as we looked at those, we saw that North Polk and Ballard, knowing that they're similar to us, but their scores were very similar. Those were the 2 closest. When you looked at our new conferences scores, our scores were fantastic. But I think when you look at this and you compare yourself to the state, it's kind of like, what does that even mean? Whereas if you can here, you still see that state score, but you can see us compared to someone that's like us. I think that gives a little more meat to it. So teachers have had a chance to dig into, to look at this and to look at this. You will also see the last piece is what we did with teachers on December 11th. And they worked in grade level teams, and they started digging into this data. Now, like I said before, for us to think that we're going to make huge instructional shifts from this is silly. But what we are going to do is next year, we're being told that we are going to have these scores much sooner, like before the school year gets out. Now, I won't hold my breath on that, but that's what they're telling us. No matter if you do it paper, pencil, or online. Which is another interesting thing, because districts have to make that decision very quickly as to whether we're going to stay the course of doing it online, which we did a mixture last year. In Amy's building, we did everything paper, pencil, except for science. Our 5th graders took science online. In Mike's building, I think it was the same way. Oh no, we did writing online.
Paper, pencil, except for writing and science were online.
And then in Vic's building, we did math, paper, pencil, and reading, paper, pencil, and writing and science were online. Now they told us, oh, you're gonna, we're gonna be moving to everybody online. Well, they're kind of backpedaling a little bit on that for next year. This year we can go the same course we did. What we did do though is we dug a little bit into what the statistics told us about paper, pencil versus online. And what we found was students might do a little bit better doing it paper, pencil. Like if you looked at the mean score between paper, pencil, and online, and sometimes there was a 10-point difference. Would you agree with me on that, Mike?
Yeah, at my level, it was 6 to 8 percentile points. So those who tested online scored 6 to 8 percentile points lower than those who took paper, pencil. The state, according to the state mean.
Yeah. Now we are really digging into that a little bit to see. And why are we doing that? Because we want our students to have the best chance to do the best they possibly can do. So we're really looking into what suits our students best. So anyway, that's just the big overview, and we just wanted you to have that. So
Thank you very much for getting this. It's kind of nice to have it. You can take it back and take a look at
well,
it.
I find it easier to look at this way. But we'll put it online too, so you have it both ways. Any
So
questions?
what testing instrument do you use? You used to use the Iowa Basic Skills. What do you use now?
It's a new assessment. We did the Iowa assessments or Iowa Test Basic Skills, however you remember them being called. Right. The state had to, because of the new ESSA requirements, when No Child Left Behind went out, and now ESSA is in place of No Child Left Behind. Each state was required to come up with what their state assessment was going to be. Well, the state had kind of decided that we were going to do something called Smarter Balance, which was a test that a number of states use. But then in Iowa City, Pearson has the hold on, was the one that had the old Iowa assessments, and they're like, hey, wait a minute, we want a piece of this pie. And so down at in the Capitol, they had a lawsuit that came into play, and then that came into the new ISASP, or Iowa Student Statewide Assessment of Student Progress. They told us it was going to look very different from Iowa assessments, because there was going to be some short answer and then the writing portion, which our students have never done a writing test that way. I'm not saying they've been tested on writing, but not in a district-wide assessment in that respect. Now, I will say, when we looked at the test booklets, I will say the questions did seem to, there were questions that followed each other, like for example, science, but I wouldn't say it looked drastically different. I mean, they had 2 questions that were short answer, and then they might have had one that had a little bit more meat to it, along with the multiple choice. So.
Thanks for sharing this stuff, Carrie, and the scores look great. My question is, if I understood right, I mean, these say spring of 19, so students took this in the spring.
Yes,
and
sir.
we just got the results recently?
Yes, and that's with.
What's going on and what recourse? I mean, that
Doesn't
make any sense.
We would 100% agree with you, Tyler, and that is the way. If you want my honest opinion on it, I think because
we are being recorded.
I think the state. Thank you. I think the state felt under the gun because of the ESSA requirements and things that we had to do, and so they really rushed through this. And they did not have these profile indicators. They didn't have, so we gave the test and they didn't have what those cut scores were going to be. They had to do all that when we did the test because only Iowa students are taking this test.
So your expectation, you said earlier, is that
That's
by
what
the
they're telling
end
us.
of this spring semester, we'll have this spring
That the state is assuring us of that at this time. Now, in 2 weeks, we will have what comes out, the Iowa school profile, used to be called the report card. These scores will be part of that. And then at that time, we should be able to go in and look at other schools a little bit easier. We had these scores that you see in your folder only because of the Raccoon Conference being willing to share some of their scores. So it's not something I think we want to be out there throwing out to everybody. But I do think when you're looking at us, it's important to see people that are a little bit, that are more like us than different from us, testing wise.
So do you call these results factual in your mind? I mean, you trust them?
This is what I say, they're a dipstick. They're one day, they are a dipstick of student performance. I think because our students we would have liked to have seen, I think, like I said, the switch between proficient and advanced. We would have liked to see more kids up here, but other than that, I don't think it was far off, actually.
Okay.
I don't. And we were, just because our students we'd never done a scoring like that for writing, we were pleased with how our students scored on writing. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so.
The interesting thing, Jeff, would be, so testing online, schools that did, their average performance was quite a bit lower than paper pencil. And so if, in my building, for example, if we make that shift away from paper pencil to online, then there may be a decrease in performance, not because our kids know less, but just in the method in which the test is given seems to have an impact. And yet they're comparing both groups together. They're not separating out and saying, well, okay, online is using this norms, paper pencil is using this norms. They're all against the same norms, although the data would indicate there is a performance difference just simply on the method in which the test is taken. So there are some things I think that are a caution.
Before we looked at this, I mean, we had to just dig into the statistical research that Iowa provided for this year. And if we wouldn't have done that, I'm pretty safe in saying we would have done everything online this year. But after and I was a big proponent last year of saying, we got to do this online, the state's going to push this, come on. And now it's like, you know what? It's okay maybe if we stay the course, because we got to think of what's best for our kids. How are we going to show what our kids really know? Because ultimately, this is another tool, another data point in the life of that child, and to know, okay, how can we use this to help support our student learning? So ultimately, do I think it does give us information? Yeah, I think that they're still tweaking it. So we're using it as big data. We're not using it as data that we're going to dive into.
Do you share your feedback with them?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The entire state has.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been a frustration.
It has. So I think if you talk to anybody, if you're talking to our representatives, I think it's important to say, we put a lot of, they're putting a lot of stake in this. If we have to report on that as to how we fall in ranks with other schools, it'd be nice to have the information in a little more timely manner.
And Tyler, to go to your point, typically we get the results back in the spring. We set our building goals based on results, and we plan our systems of intervention based on those things. And it's been very difficult to try to sort through that when we just get the information. The year's half over by the time we get the information. It's hard to plan. And then to Jeff's question about trusting the results, the first time a test is given, they're guessing on some of the norms, and they're setting some of the proficiency marks on where they think it is. And so, for example, when we looked at advanced, so at the old Iowa assessment, it was set at about 80. Well, they set this one at 85. It's a brand new test, new system. So, of course, you're going to have less kids hit that mark because you've raised the mark higher than it's been in the past. And it's a test they're not familiar with. And the system's never been used before because of the technology piece. And so some of it could have been just difficulty navigating the system for the first time. So I think as we prepare and we learn more from this, I think we'll do much better this spring because our kids will be ready. And also, we've never assessed writing ever. Like, this is, the first time at this level.
On the statewide.
Which kind of tells you a little bit of what's wrong with the system, just from a macro point. The fact that we've never tested writing ever.
Yeah,
I'm
we
just
looked at that. No, you're
going back to my
exactly right.
same old drum I
Yeah,
always beat,
no.
that, standardized testing is not the best measure, but I know we gotta do it. And this is the primary one they use, the state, to assess our district,
Yes.
even though.
This is the old name.
This is the only one they use.
But, I mean, you go to the school board convention thing and they just rail on this stuff till the cows come home, but yet it's the primary tool that we use for the state. So anyway, so.
Like, just the
won't go
logistical
there,
parts of
but-
assessing the writing. I mean, imagine how many writing samples across the state they had to assess.
Yeah, but they can use computers now
Right.
to write them.
They do some,
So,
and then they also do a part that's hand scored as well. So it's, yeah,
Okay.
but anyway.
Yeah,
now
I think we better keep moving.
Yep.
That was an interesting topic.
Carrie, thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Goodness
Thanks,
sakes.
Steve, say.
This is,
Most
we're not even on the
critical.
same day anymore on this agenda, I don't think. That was, we picked two good topics. Okay, next we have the 2021 hiring priorities for
Yep.
the future.
You're gonna have to get those a little bigger there, thank you.
What is that?
One of the things that we try to do, I want to just inform you of what we've come up with. We look at what our enrollment projections are. We take a look at how that will fit into the overall budget. And as an administrative team, we start to look at what are the areas that are important and what would we be as far as the priorities. Now, I'm not saying that because it was a number one, that was the highest priority, but these were the top 4 that we are going to go after for the 2021 school year. One of the things, and if I might ask Vic or Mike a little bit, but one of the things that we have is that we now have a computer science requirement. And we have a person that is taking that endorsement right now within our system. So what will happen for next year is that the person is actually over in Mr. Danison's building. So what will happen is he's going to be split between the high school and the middle school. Is that correct, gentlemen? Okay. So what will happen is Mike needs to have a fill-in for halftime of that person being gone. Is that correct, Mike?
Yes. Well, Mr. Beecher, that position hasn't posted yet, so we don't.
Right, we haven't.
We don't know exactly how that will shake out.
Right, but this is what we're looking at.
Yes.
There'll be an
So-
increase.
So it'll be an increase in your billing of 0.5.
What we're looking at doing, I think, is, with the new computer science requirements at the high school, and then Carrie and I met with a bunch of parents last year to talk about maybe some increased offerings of exploratory classes. And when we met with those parents, 2 themes came up, which was either STEM offerings or communications offerings. And so what we thought was this would be a good time to pair together the high school requirements for computer science with a middle school STEM program as an exploratory, and then you could have a full-time position and you could find someone to fill that rather than try to hire a half-time computer science. So that's what those 2 positions are. Is the high school.
And we haven't posted for them yet, is what Mike's saying. We have to make sure that we do that.
But there's one teacher shared between 2 buildings.
Yeah, so the position would be shared. Yeah.
We also have a situation where we have a 3rd grade reading associate. We batted back and forth how we were going to handle this. And this is something that we felt that we would go with an associate. It'd be a 7-hour-a-day position, 5 days a week. And that would be over in Amy's building. And again, we talked about a number of different things there. And then the last one that we looked at, or we're planning on looking at, is a situation for the person that is with Mr. Pizzetti, making that a full-time secretarial position. And I believe what happens now is she has the position of, if this would play out this way, she has the position of associate, study hall associate, and AD secretary. So if we post it and this is the way it works, then there would be a full-time AD secretary and we would need to find someone, if, depending on what happens there, we need to find someone for the at-risk para. You guys have anything that you want to add to that?
So just to confirm then, that's an additional with the 1 and 2, that's an additional 1 more FTE?
Yes, correct.
But number 4, can you just, is that an additional half or 1? Or?
It would be actually a half, wouldn't it? Because of the fact that if we post, again, we have to post this to make sure that we do this correctly. If we post this and it plays out this way, there would be an additional 0.5 FTE for at-risk para.
Because we already got a half.
We got to have.
Right.
Doing the secretary job already.
Correct.
Yeah, gotcha. Whew.
And, you know, we've talked about what we have for dollars. We talked about that a couple different times. We've gone through many different things that we looked at. We've been conservative, I would think, with how we're looking at this as far as enrollment. And who knows, you know, maybe there'll be some changes in the state. We'll be generous when they go with the SSA and things will change. But this is what we are moving forward with and wanted to make sure that you are aware of it and if you had any questions or concerns.
Any questions? Anyone? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, my glasses back on here. Moving on to announcements and celebrations. Are there?
Anyone have anything there?
Classrooms are almost there at my new ones, so that's a huge fist pump out of me. We're really close. A couple light switches that gotta work and heat one of the rooms, and we're nearly there. So it's been a long time coming, it feels like.
Yeah, looks nice.
Furniture was delivered last week. It looks great in the new rooms. We've actually are occupying several of the spaces already, and the kids are loving the spaces, and it's awesome. We're just excited to get it all finished. We have finals at the end of this week. We'll start second semester next week, so we're rolling right along the first half of the year to be completed.
Awesome.
We begin the assessment month. Winter benchmarking for fast testing starts this week. Go through January, and then the intermediate does NWA assessment starting in February. Oh, no, but I should. I think some of you follow me on Twitter, but there was a piano that was looking for a home, and I had seen this idea a couple years ago and then didn't do anything with it. And then Carrie and I visited Jordan Creek Elementary in December to learn a little bit more about Leader in Me that I talked about with the 7 Habits. And they had a piano in their entryway for kids to just play whatever they wanted. And I thought, I have got to do this. And so a week later, there was an email that went out that could anybody use a piano? It's free, you just have to come get it. And Steve and Dan, great guys.
No, I didn't go get it.
No. Steve and Dan.
That's the problem.
And brought it, and it has been the most heartwarming thing. I come in the mornings, and there's probably 10 kids lined up to play at 7:30. They can play in the mornings, lunchtime, and after school. And kids that you wouldn't think could play, and kids that are, I mean, they're clapping for each other, and I didn't know you could do that. And kids that can't play but just want to play a few notes, and asking if they can stay in for recess, which I don't want them to necessarily stay in, so we've had to work through a few things like that.
No problem. Good job by you.
Yeah.
Nice job.
Yeah.
But then I opened it up to parents this weekend in an email, and I have about 6 parents that said they would come in and play during lunch too. So it's been really cool.
Yeah.
So if any of you play, come on in and share your talents.
Okay.
They're not jumping at the chance.
Yeah, I know one song.
It was Jeff
I can't sing.
Nelson. Not sure if you
Yep.
know Jeff and Terry.
Yeah.
Awesome.
They donated that.
That is a great idea.
It's awesome.
Great idea. Wow. Okay, moving on. It looks like we have board reports. Do we want to go to appoint the Story County Conference Board member before we go to the individual reports? Let's do that. Who is our current?
Kim was.
Oh, so Jeff.
I would be glad to do it.
Seriously,
That's an appointment, I hear.
Yeah.
seriously, I didn't, I'm
That's
sorry, I was
nice.
joking.
I was
about
gonna
that.
go to the meeting, I got the thing in the mail because I went to her. Then I thought, no, I better not step my bounds. So I
Seriously,
didn't go, yeah, I'll do
Well,
it.
thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was kind of just teasing.
That's okay, Debbie.
That was
I'll do
good.
it.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yep, I'm glad you got that, John.
Okay.
Okay.
You need a motion for
Is
that?
it, we have a motion to approve,
I
Jen?
think, I just have it that it's just
Okay.
appointed.
Just appointment, okay.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. So, any other board reports? I have one, but I'll wait to share. Nobody else? Okay. So, two things, I think. Well, one thing I want to just mention, because some of you may have been aware that we had talked about discussing the land and exercising some options in January. I should have said this at the beginning of the agenda. But we had had some conversations with the seller, and at his request, we are going to move that on to the February meeting. So that's why you didn't see that on there. We had that discussion just
Right.
in the.
And that doesn't mean there's any problems or anything,
No.
just a move, so.
He had just asked for
No.
that. Secondly, I would say, I just wanted to give an update. Tyler and I had a meeting over break about trying to further the committee structure and using that here more as in the school board. And we looked at some existing committee membership policies that we have around ad hoc, and made some, I think had some good ideas about how to move that forward. We will be, in the upcoming months, maybe as early as next month, maybe not quite that soon, we will be bringing proposals to amend policy 208, which is ad hoc, to add standing committees. Is that what we call them, Tyler?
Yep.
Yep. That we would like to recommend, just to leverage board members' time and get more of the community involved in some things. So, do you want to fill in any details about what we talked about, or do you want to wait until February?
No, I just think it'll be good to move forward. We
Mhm.
talked about facility and finance clearly being two and potentially legislative, but starting with facility and finance, leverage the board and engage other folks, including, I just will say, the idea that we bounce around, having somebody, for example, on the facility committee, somebody from the Gilbert Education Foundation, somebody from Athletic Boosters, and somebody from Fine Arts. So it also helps us with our communication.
Yep. As well as some potential at-large, just to
Absolutely.
kind of get some membership. So I thought we had a good brainstorming session about it. And, more to come, but please reach out to either of us. I think we'll be kind of trying to draft some things to get in front of you guys.
I think the other strategy in it too would be find future board members.
Exactly.
Because once you get used to the facilities, or you get used to the finance, or you get used to the legislative, then that makes kind of a natural fit of, hey, you want to
Yeah.
further
And,
those skills.
yep, and of course temper that with the transparency necessary to make sure, so just because we're possibly implementing committees, those committees, the purpose of those would be to present proposals, not to make decisions. Decisions.
Committee
still-
reports that
Yeah,
be approved by the
committees,
board.
the decisions still end with the board, like we said, and we would make requirements towards publishing agendas and minutes and things like that. So really, I think positive overall. Okay. Anybody else? No? Anything? Okay. So we can move on to 504, district valuations.
This is pretty much fresh. I think I received it Friday morning or Thursday, but this is the lowest it's been for quite a while. But if you remember some of our conversation with Travis when he was there was a really big ag rollback. And we still saw an increase, but this is a direct reflection of the rollback. So.
Yeah. So 5%, 5.16%
overall, yeah.
Overall.
And then the breakdown is, Story is 5.08, Boone, and then the combination of the two is 5.16.
with a change difference of 29.
Yeah, an increase of 29.
And we'll get the breakout of ag versus residential and all that. Yeah.
Yes, that will be
Yeah.
to come.
It's still, from an absolute number, it's still basically right there, right?
29 million.
But as we grow, that absolute number needs to grow or our percentage goes down. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it really drives that, our levy. So, yeah, but, it did increase, so I guess we should be happy.
Right, okay, absolutely. Okay, thank you. 505 looks like the 2021 district calendar, so we have to set a public hearing, is that what this is for?
Yes.
Okay.
The tricky part of this one was when we talked about it administratively was where for the 2021 school year, where things kind of laid as far as the vacations and different days. But if you go down to the bottom, Memorial Day is a little bit earlier this year. Kind of, I don't know, maybe for the rest of you, it didn't throw you for a curve, but it did me as far as, where this would land. So what we're looking at is, I think this past 2 years, we've had a full, 2 weeks off for Christmas break. This will be a couple days less than that. I mean, I think everyone will still be okay with that. I know it's tough, but if you take a look at it, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. The reason that we do this is so that this can be brought forth. Then we can have the public hearing, which allows the public to come in and say, I like the fact that you're doing this. I don't like the fact that you're doing that. Some of those things are out of our control as far as our start dates and things. When we do this, we talk over administratively, like what they like for parent-teacher conference, what works well, what maybe needs to be changed. I don't know. Administrative team, is there anything that you want to add into this as far as the Christmas break was a little bit of a change? Anything else that was super amount of change there?
We did take out, if you scroll up just a little bit to see like April, or scroll down, I guess. We did take out a full day of PD, and I don't know, did you say this, or am I? We took a full day out, and what we did is, because we wanted the early outs to be a little more consistent for families, so you'll notice, I think it's the second and fourth Wednesdays will be early outs. And then what we did is we have 2 days at the end of the year. And the reason that we did that is so that for example, on June 1st of 2021, the 28th will be like the work day, clerical, we'll get all that done, all that checkout stuff done. And then the 1st will be a day when we all come together to do some share out of learning for that year. We did it last year, and because of the snow days, we had remember we had those extra PD days that we had to make up. And so we really liked the way that we could come together at the end and kind of do there's learning, but it's also learning from each other. If you've ever heard of an ed camp style unconference, that's kind of what we did there. So we are putting that into place next year. And so we moved that day there and there.
Got it.
We did some switch off. We also added, we've had flex days for teachers to use before and after school, before school starts and then at the end of the year, and we put those back into the calendar as well.
Because one of the things,
for professional learning at the beginning of the school.
If you'll scroll up to August, we talked, you guys approved to let us go with Infinite Campus for our student management system. We want to make sure that everyone has the training for that. So if you take a look at that, those days are just not, people are kind of, coffee and donuts type of thing. There's a lot of things that we're going to be doing to make sure that everyone's comfortable with Infinite Campus and the rest of the professional development that we start out the year with. But again, like she said about those flux days, we have them folded right in there now, and I think that they'll be very valuable. Anything else, team, that you want to add?
Just a little bit of clarification, because we could technically start anytime after August 23rd, so we could have started Monday, the August 24th date. But we felt like by the time State Fair actually doesn't get over until the 23rd of August this next year. So we just felt like with as many parents and that we have involved staff members who watch their own children at the fair, we wanted to not have all the week of the whole 17th be professional development. So that's why we kind of went. And the elementary really likes to start on a Thursday.
Ease into it.
It's hard. It's hard.
And I guarantee you, if we were all the principal in elementary, we'd be on for a Thursday start.
The other big thing is it does move graduation off of Memorial Day, Memorial Weekend.
That's the first time.
It's been not as long, 6, 7 years. I mean, it cycles through that calendar cycle, and the way it falls now is graduation would actually be after kids are out of school. So we'd rather be on summer break and then a graduation would occur, which seemed a little odd.
Yeah.
So
What does it say?
the cycle changed with it being the last week of the month, so.
So it's on, what does that say? I
What
can't
day is it
remember.
on?
The 23rd.
23rd.
But the,
The weekend before, it's the weekend before.
Yeah, the weekend
Memorial Day.
before.
Gotcha.
But it's not.
29th.
Okay.
yeah, that was really weird.
So do we have to make a motion on this, or is this just to set the public hearing?
Just to show you what is going to be at the public hearing. So we'll take an action on it in February,
In February.
after the hearing.
And just so you know that graduation has been all over the course of the last 25 years, it's been all over the place. It's not consistent, it always fell on Memorial Day. Penny Davis, thank goodness, keeps pretty accurate records of every little graduation program since the beginning of
Time.
Gilbert.
Yeah.
It's been all over the place depending on the holidays. But this cycle is going to be about a 6-year cycle before it flips back, so.
But it is pretty important though, Vic, don't you think, and the rest of the administrative team, if we go with this, and I know it has to be at the February meeting, that we let our public know, because I think as maybe Andrew said, it's been a while since we've been off on Memorial Day. So the sooner we let people know, and we gotta go through the proper means of that, the better off it will be.
Yeah.
And that's letting them know a year and a half advance.
Yeah.
That's still a lot of time. So they can plan their receptions and things plenty of time.
Okay, well, I sure will. Okay. Perfect. Okay, looks like we are moving on to old business, believe it or not. Our first item on the agenda is second reading of amended new board policies with possible action to approve. So we are going through our policies now and making sure they're in alignment with IASB, that they're reviewed every 5 years, etc. A number of these were in the 200 series. Can we do this in mass? Or do we have to do each one individually to talk them? Obviously, we can pull out any questions that anybody has about them, but
It would be it would be 100. Are you on second reading?
Second reading.
yes, there's 100 for A.
Yes,
and then
I just want to make sure we were on the.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Sorry, a lot of them are in the 200 series, and there's a few on there. Can we, my question is, can we look at these in mass, or do we have to approve each individual item?
No, it's all together. It's one action item for all of them unless somebody excludes one, otherwise they can be together.
I didn't see anything that stuck out on that grouping.
I make a motion to approve.
Can I tell you something before that? I didn't mean to interrupt you, but Deb has done a really good job of, we're talking about these committees. We have that policy committee, and the last time it's Andrew and Deb and myself right now, and we have like a chart that has all these policies, and we take minutes from it. It's pretty professional there, so you're doing a nice job.
Because I took minutes, I did a good job. I paid attention and I took minutes. But there isn't one of those for this first one, Tyler, to show that really what we were reflecting was just the changes, making sure we're in alignment with IASB. So I don't remember.
I second the motion.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any other further discussion? Was that?
Are we waiving the third reading then?
That motion was
To
the
that.
second reading with waiving the third.
Okay.
That's what Jeff had, right?
Yeah, I'm assuming that's
That's
what
what I
Jeff
said.
wanted. It's
Sorry,
6:01.
geez.
With possible action.
Thank you, Jen. Okay, so those passed as stated. On to new business. So 701 construction, as you know, Adam was giving his update before. These are the action items from that. He went through the Story County construction updates, cost budget summary. I know we had time for questions then. Has anybody thought of any questions? Or maybe we can throw it at Sam. Sure. I don't know. Any questions on that topic? That is just, okay.
Just one on, it's an assumption is that all ground repair will be taken care of, seeding and everything where all that construction occurred.
Definitely.
But then Vic brought up when I was touring the high school about the lane coming out to the boat gag, and I walked that this weekend too. And I mean, how's that going to be left?
Sure. So the standard contract and standard agreement with
any contractor has to be brought up at least to the condition of when everyone arrived. And so if there's big ruts or whatever, the dirt or whatever, they'll get that graded out. It'll be to the condition before everyone got started.
Was your change order for the sidewalks around the outdoor building there for the ag, is that because it was an add-on order? Why wouldn't we had that in the plan?
That's a good question. Do you recall the specifics around that one, Lindsay? I'd have to pull
look
some of that
back.
paperwork up.
That isn't in our information, is it?
What change order number is that?
Do you know?
Which change order, Jeff?
I don't remember. I read them all, and that one just stuck out, like,
I can-
you know why that was an ad if you had it already put in. But if you did it with contingency money at the end, then you wouldn't have had it.
Right, it may have just been something that wasn't on there, and then I had to, did you recall that specifically, was that just a request to have more sidewalks out there? I'm sorry, I don't have that at the top of my head.
That's okay. That's all right. That's only really the one that stuck out to me.
Is it
Sidewalks around the
3-2,
building.
sidewalks and paving? It's a change order, greenhouse pavement elevations?
It's a number.
Oh, great, oh, the.
Is that a different
elevation.
one, Jeff? Maybe that's not it. The first one on the list. That's not.
It's okay. I won't.
The one with the greenhouses, there were some variations in the grading. We didn't want to put in all the sidewalk, or there's a kind of a strange drive that was meandering around the greenhouse. We changed that, but then it changed the elevations of the surrounding sidewalks. So that could have been that one. That's the greenhouse one.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm good.
Okay.
Okay. Let me go back to my agenda here. Okay, so we had accepted, denied, change request directives. In one, do we need to approve
No, they
those?
were under 10,000.
Under 10,000.
They've
gotcha.
already been signed.
And then we have a series of change orders. So these were the ones that we approved in the past, and these are just changes to the contract. Is there a motion to approve the change orders?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any further discussion? Okay. Yeah. So those change orders, those change directives were approved. Sam, is there anything that you would add? Looks like the next item is owner-architect meeting agenda. Is that, or do you have any other things you would add?
I don't have anything else to add. I was just here to answer some additional questions, but no, and Adam mentioned earlier that regarding the contingency dollars, we're going to have a meeting on the 23rd to speak about that, and then in terms of what we arrive at on the backside of that, we'll debate if that gets shared at the next board meeting, or if there's a committee in place, that might go to that committee. So there's some additional discussion amongst the administration and the board on the specific protocol that we'll go through, since you're considering some of adding those additional committees.
Okay.
So that's just kind of an observation of,
Yeah.
after we have that meeting, we'll talk more on how to proceed, present that to the board.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for Sam? Okay. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to.
I have a
this-
question about the procedure, not you.
Thanks.
Okay, all right.
So if they bring, out of the contingency fund, if they go spend that, they meet with the administrators, right? And then it comes to us?
I believe that's the plan, is that so we had $100 and some thousand left.
71, I think, is what.
Oh, 71? I thought that you mentioned
He's
134.
adding in the track. He's adding in the track.
Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha.
I was wondering
Okay.
where where it came from, but.
Yeah,
that
okay,
makes
so
sense now.
70. So they went back to the buildings to talk about this as a district, to see
Okay.
what's the best use of that, the remaining funds, and I believe it will be coming back to us.
Right, what we'd like to do is be able to talk about it and try to prioritize that. I know that that's going to be challenging, but we feel that we can do that. And then we'd like to, I don't know if we want to bring it to a smaller group. That's something that I guess I haven't talked to you, or I know Tyler's on the facility committee, if we want to come to a smaller group and then to the board. But we will, like I said, we will come with a recommendation and like to get that going.
Okay. I mean, I would recommend Tyler's that. something
Yeah, we're
like
both
that.
on that one.
Yeah,
So maybe we come to you guys and share that and bring it to the board.
Yeah, but I think you work through it
Yep,
together and engage
Yep.
Ayla and story as needed.
I think that like Adam and Sam and Art and all the administrative team. Am I leaving anyone out that's on that committee that's going to be meeting with us? I think they'll all be there.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay. Awesome. So moving on to 702, first reading of the reviewed amended board policies. This is where Lindsay and Andrew and I met last week. And you'll see there's a chart, the first item on here, the minutes from our meeting. We have a lot of policies to review this year just to keep in line with the 5-year guideline. Is it more of a guideline? It's more than a guideline. So what you have here is reflective of the 800 series. And we did take a big chunk, but at the same time, a lot of the policies were pretty straightforward. And we felt we could do that. I noted on this chart for you guys, if there were differences between what the Gilbert district policy was versus IASB. In most cases, there were no differences at all. You'll see some of them, the only difference were the legal and cross references, which we just recommended that we would update our version to show those. There is an additional 801.5, the committee recommended that we rescind. That's kind of a duplicate one. We've already got that same procedures covered in 705.1. Just to avoid redundancy, we recommended that we would rescind. Let me see. Yeah, there was one that Gail needed to update, and I saw, thank you for doing that, Gail. We just needed to update where we had insert method here, which was kind of cool because that's very timely with some things that Gail had finished and selling some of those obsolete items online.
Was that the only one that then had any changes? I mean, you recommending to delete or omit one,
yeah,
right?
That's the only one that had changes. Yeah. There is one, you'll see the section in yellow, the capital assets. That is one that we were actually removing this, it's on the, I have it here, but just letting you know, we're removing that for further discussion because that is one that we think warrants more conversation and possibly a rewrite. That talks about barcoding and doing a yearly inventory of all of your assets, and we think that we need to write a policy that's more reflective of our actual processes, and that's not it. So we will be presenting that one.
What we found kind of, at least with regard to our banks, is everything stays around for a really long time, and by the time you're to the end of the useful life, you can't even give it away online.
Like Jeff said, the fun is going and picking it up. Right?
Yeah. So anyway, so when you start talking about most of the furniture, fixture, and computers, there's not a lot of risk there.
Glasses are worth $1,200. Right?
Yeah. So at any rate, I would not go crazy.
No. With that policy.
The internal controls associated around that, whatever we need to do to meet state condition.
Yeah, right, and it gets to be we need to have policy that I think is reflective of what we're actually doing.
Of the risk as well.
And then of the risk, right. Yeah. So that's an excellent point. But we will be bringing those back. So I guess at this point I would just ask if there's anybody that has any questions about some of these. I understand, like I said, that it's a lot. Hopefully we won't have this many at a time the next time, but.
I love the summary.
Yeah, thanks for this summary. The only comment I'd have, and I could see it going either way, 801.1 talks about long-range planning, building and site long-range planning, and that could be an opportunity to incorporate a committee. Right? But I could also see you leave it off there because the board can then choose whether to use a committee or not. But things like that are what I would see the opportunity to make sure that we have some consistency with how we're handling it.
Okay.
That would be the only comment I have.
And a lot of times, a good way to write it is the board or a delegated committee of.
Yeah, exactly.
Leave the or in there, and that way you have the latitude to do it the way you want.
Right.
Okay. I will make note of that, and we can maybe make that adjustment for the next reading. Any other questions about that? Like I said, this is just the first reading, so please feel free if you go back and listen, Jeff, and read them, or Andrew, please Well, you're on the committee.
I'll be around.
Yeah, she'll be pointing that out. Okay, do we, no action is taken on the first reading?
We have to have at least 2 readings.
All right.
Just tell me it's getting ready to kick off.
Let me see, I'm on page 2, hold please. Okay. 703, it looks to authorize the district's administration to submit a request to the school budget for $319,631 for modified supplemental aid for 2021, dropout prevention program.
This is, we have this yearly, the board is, the state is giving the board local control for this. So this is one of the items. So basically, the program itself is pretty much the same as we've done every year. And the maximum modified supplement here is basically a formula based on enrollment. So the minimal increase here is basically just because of our increase of enrollment. So it's a calculation. So basically, I wanted to show the difference between the current year and our proposed for next year. We primarily have staff. And you can see that in the services, and we have interventionists, specialists at the elementary, intermediate, middle, at all 4 levels. And the new thing for this year, we have added student support strategist. Okay. And that is a new position this year. And so that is split between elementary and intermediate. And can you guys talk on what she actually brings?
A lot.
So that's been a good
amazing. She's really helped to, we really were looking for somebody who could kind of make that connection between our families and school and be that liaison. And so she's really helped some of our families who maybe find themselves homeless or in some critical financial. She helps them go through and fill out paperwork at all the different areas to get maybe rental assistance, heat assistance. She's also just helped us even at a building level. She really helps with just helping us with some behaviors. She's run interventions at both. She happens to be actually a certified yoga coach, and so has done interventions with yoga with some of our kiddos who just need to relax a little bit. So it's really been kind of nice. We may look at that position at kind of taking on maybe more of a K-12, especially with, it's hard because some of our families aren't only living in just 2 buildings. Some of the families she's dealt with have been in all 4 buildings. You know, they have sibling groups, so she does, and she does a wonderful job of communicating, foster families, all the different things. So that's really been a nice.
So who does she report to?
She technically reports to Amy and I.
Okay.
And then works really closely in alignment with our guidance counselors in our buildings.
Nice.
She's actually she's calling it a one-stop shop. And so kind of like our own food pantry and clothing room. And so it's actually in one of the old music storage rooms down at the East End. And so we sought out some donations. She's written some grants. And so that if there's families that need something like right now, we could get those things for them. So it's still in the process of being put together. We have several actually donation things. But the other thing is her background is some juvenile court, community family resources. And so she has worked a lot with DHS as much as we wish we weren't having to do those kind of things and working with them closely. But a lot of things that I'm like, man, things that we didn't do before we had her, and the relationship now that we have and connections and what we know that we can help support our kids with. And she's been an amazing addition to our kids and our staff.
Awesome. This is 100% property taxes.
Okay, I was wondering.
That's, yeah.
Okay, and we need to, is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any additional questions? Okay, that approved. On to 704, authorize the district's administration to submit a request to the school budget review committee in the amount of $351.34. for administrative costs for Woodward Academy Day School. Is that 351? Did I read that?
351, yeah.
Okay.
This is we belong to a consortium. We are sending more and more students to Woodward and Granger. Woodward Academy is a day school? No. Woodward Academy is a day school.
You're right.
And, is that on here? I
Yep,
get those
it
things
is.
too.
Yep.
Okay. And then, so this allows us we're requesting spending authority because they're going to charge us administrative costs. So this is our ability to give the spending authority to pay them because we're not educating them ourselves. So we have additional administrative costs. So you'll see there are two different schools, the Woodward Academy Day School and then the Grandwood, which is in Granger. And we do have, and the enrollment for us has increased compared to other years. So that's why we're bringing it to you this year, because we have seen an increase of that enrollment of our kids. So it's an opportunity to get more spending authority because we have additional expenses.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the Woodward Academy Day School for $351.34?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any further discussion? Okay, that amount is approved. 705, this would be, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second, we got that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any additional discussion? No, those are approved, Gail.
Okay.
All right, 706, possible approval of a bus bid. Hang on.
You can see basically the two, that it's becoming less and less just kind of like the milk bids and the bread bids and whatever, less people in the game. The recommendation though that I would have for this one is to take a little bit of Thomas Bus Sales. I believe that total with the trade-in is $111,621.
Okay.
That does meet the requirements in case you wanted to know
I was gonna
about the
say.
seat belts. Anything that we buy now has to have that.
Okay, so that would be our first, and we talked about every year with the new bus, because we typically get a bus every year.
Move to approve the Thomas bid.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any additional discussion? Okay, approved the Thomas bus sales bid for the new bus. All right, 707, Gail, review financial reports.
Yeah, there's just a couple items. I wanted to update you guys on our discussion in December was, let's revisit our, what we have for enrollment and what we have for spending to, and we still have the solvency goal of 12%. So to bring it to more realistic, to follow our enrollment trends and to follow we left at that meeting saying, if I remember this right, let's follow the SSA rate for expenditures and go with no increase in enrollment, keep it safe. Yep. So the scenarios that I put in your packet, Exhibit 1 and 2, reflects, and this chart reflects the differences between Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2. And so Exhibit 2 basically with the flat and then meeting the SSA rate at 1.5, it brings us to more of a realistic future, or more realistic in line with what we anticipate for our enrollment study and our keeping our expenditures at the rate of the SSA would be our plan. So as you can see, it does bring it down, which in turn is more realistic with our planning modules. So I wanted to present that to you guys. So moving forward, this is what we're going to use. So once we get the actuals, we're supposed to be hearing, they said Valentine's Day, so February 14th, SSA rate. They think it should move fast. Hopefully it does. So as soon as we get those knowns in there, we'll start plugging some of the knowns in. Our valuations, we are known, so I'll be plugging those in. So, but to move forward, this is what we're going to be going with.
Okay.
In our model.
Speaking of the valuation, not to jump all the way back, but do you remember what we used for an assumption on that?
I don't offhand. I was thinking 4%.
Yeah, it's probably conservative, right?
Yeah,
so this
it was
5 is
conservative,
probably
but
still more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking 4, but I'm not sure. But I'll let you know on that, Tyler.
Yeah.
And so then I wanted to mention that changed. And the other thing that I didn't even think about is I mentioned in this yellow here, and it's kind of a summary, it was a little bit more detailed, but what I was talking about is when we refinanced our published budget, overspent the other area. Now, when we publish the budget April 15th, we can't overspend in any of these 4 areas. Well, when we sold, we had to pay all of our debt off. When we refinanced, well, I wasn't anticipating that all in 1 month. We didn't even know we were going to refinance. So, as you can see, our sale on December 2nd put us over the maximum. So, no harm done. All we need to do is by May 31st, we need to publish a new budget in the paper, have a hearing, increase it. We just need to make sure we do that. Didn't even think about how that would affect this. So when I saw that, I was like, whoa, what happened? So just want to give you a heads up that we'll have to amend the budget. And I think that is all I have that I wanted to point out. Does anybody have anything else?
Any additional questions? So is that, do I understand right? So you had Exhibit 2 with the new kind of assumptions. We are going to go with those assumptions going forward instead of you. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
That's what I thought you said. Going forward.
Yep, our enrollment's going to be flatlined, and then our expenditures are going to match the SSA rate, whatever the SSA rate is. So, which we budget 1.5% for SSA.
So, Gail, just to make sure, so we're thinking Exhibit 2 unless we are surprised by better news from the state.
Yes. Yep.
And on that Exhibit 2, then the positions that we just added are all in on that.
Yes, they are actually a different line item. So if you, we put those in as priorities, and they are in, let's see, 1, 2, 3, Section 3. If you see them, the priorities is says option 3. And if you can see, this year we had 400,000. Next year we have 135,000. So we have that plugged in over and beyond the percentage. We look at these as in additional positions, priorities, basically. So they're not calculated in the 1%, 1.5% expenditures. They're a one-time. And that dollar amount, how we come up with that is trying to find that sweet spot of where we can be and how much can we plug in there before we go way over. And so, like for example, when we end a year, our expenditures are less than we anticipated. So that allows us to put some into that next year. When the SSA rate comes in higher, we can possibly look at that or increase our overall expenditures, depending on where the insurance comes in. We don't know what our insurance increases will be. So, so as the knowns become known, we will plug those in. Otherwise, we will go flat rate enrollment and the SSA at 1.5 with expenditures at 1.5. Okay.
Any other questions? Nope. Okay.
We are going to start the budgeting process the end of January. So I'll be bringing you some scenarios and what that may look like come April.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. It looks like we move on to our second public forum. If there's anybody who would like to bring anything to it. Okay. Sorry, just anything at all? Okay. We're moving on to the consent agenda. Is there anything that a board member would like to pull out of the consent agenda for discussion? Okay. That is no. So do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Well, sorry, I
Sure.
think it's the Broussards, is that right? So they had one of the open enrollment applications, so I think it'd be good just to very briefly.
Okay.
I mean, I know you've probably gotten the whole spiel about the matrix, but it's something that we have to hold hard and fast to, so.
Right.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Lindsay.
And I appreciate the letter, I appreciate the explanation. just as Tyler had mentioned, we have a matrix that we have to hold on to. If I understood things correctly, we have one that's filed for this year, and that's the one that we'd have to deny because of it not being filed in a timely fashion. But I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you have filed for the next school year. What happens is you will have filed in a timely fashion there. And so what will happen is we'll have to see where we're at on our matrix as far as availability. It's nothing, we don't like pick and choose because this person or that person. And we want to try to work with all the people involved. But like I said, I don't know, is it, Gail, when do we start making some of those decisions? Is that?
Don't we start like?
Usually everything with the exception of kindergarten at the March meeting.
March.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to try to make sure that you know where things are at, and don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call, or if we don't have an answer. I think that you talked to our registrar Cassie. We want to make sure that we're communicating as much as possible.
Okay.
Do you guys have any questions on anything?
Not right now. I don't think so.
Okay.
Did you have a chance to go over the grid with them, or I don't know if you...
Yeah, we talked a little bit about just the way the space works, that there's less spots technically in kindergarten than there is first grade. And
Yeah, could you just pull that up? And I don't mean to belabor the meeting, but I just.
Yeah, because
so
we'd like to have your child.
But that's what we go off of, and as Lindsay said, it's basically how many spots are there, and right now, very few of the classes actually would have an opening for an open enrollment. So
Have we
it's not-
had any openings in kindergarten in the last year or so?
not once we established how many kids we took on at the beginning. Does that make sense?
No.
So like we,
Middle of the school,
usually about April, May, we make the determination based on what our roster looks like at kindergarten roundup, how many more kiddos we could take. And so once we kind of have that, we haven't necessarily had spots. I will say the number is such that if everything were to stay as it was, we should have space as
Oh,
we
nice.
come into
Okay.
first grade.
Good.
So as you look at the matrix, it changes. Where the ideal section is 20 per class, it goes to 22. So then that, in essence, opens up about 10 more spots. So before, right now, where we're -7, we should have 3 open. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Once they go to first grade.
So they got a good chance then.
There's a chance, yeah. We don't make any determination
Yeah.
yet, because we have to.
You get my vote if you can do it. For what it's worth, I want all the kids here.
But it goes from 18 to 20, and then up to 20.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you for pulling that out. Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
John, was that you?
It was.
It was, it was John.
John's here.
Who's that? Any further discussion? Thank you for pulling that out, Tyler.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so it looks like the next topic is discussing the calendar. We have, is that this Thursday, sorry. Thursday, we have the regional workshop in the Ames District.
I want to make sure there's a meal.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a meal.
5 to 5:30.
Where is that?
Who's all going?
It's in the district office, so do you know where the baseball fields are?
The new ones?
Inside
Yeah,
baseball
the district
fields.
office
Yeah,
there.
on
It's in
24th
there?
Street. Is it 24th Street? Yeah, right there. And that's at 5 o'clock, 5 to 5:30 is the meal, and then 5:30 to 8 is the workshop.
I think
Thanks,
I
you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I signed Andrew, Tyler, Jeff, and Deba.
Andrew, Tyler, Jeff, and Deb. Yep,
Debbie.
Debbie. Oh, God. Okay, let's see. No name tags.
They did inform me that if I sign you guys up, you guys get emails on that. Because once I sign you up,
I don't think
Yes,
that.
I did.
Okay,
That's a
'cause
while
once
ago,
I send you
though.
up, I don't
Yeah.
hear.
I think I got an email on it. It was a while ago.
It was a while ago. It was clear back in December when I
Yeah.
enrolled.
I got it.
So their new office is over by the new baseball field?
Yeah. Mary
The
Ann.
district office is
Yeah,
right
sure,
on
that-
on the right, yeah, yeah.
You don't cross over.
And then on January 27th, on the calendar, January 27th at 5 o'clock, we have a closed session meeting. And then our next regular board meeting is February 10th at 6 o'clock. And that will be when we have the calendar hearings.
We need a joint meeting that we need to schedule.
Yes, I think we need to discuss that joint meeting with the city as well. Do you just want to set, like, should we do a,
Maybe find out, could you find out when their next?
Next scheduled meeting is?
Just-
Why do we need a joint meeting? Do we always have one?
It was, do
It's
It was
fun.
on the,
you want me to talk to the city?
Yeah.
Okay. If it's all right with the board, it's all right with the board, I'll talk to the
Facilities
city
committee, I was thinking.
and the tower group and see if we can get something set. I don't know when the city has their next meeting.
It's every other week. but-
Yeah.
Move to adjourn.
All those in favor? Oh, wait,
Second.
second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
Any score?
No, I shut it off. I
That
got in
felt like I
trouble.
had never.
Oh, hey, Vic,
You guys are all looking at me like, well, maybe this ain't a good thing.
No, we're all just wondering what the score was.
you want to shut that off, please?
Oh, yeah.
That's
8:39, the first, 0-0.
Oh, I heard all the dings.
I know, right? I shut that off.
Way to pick
Like I've never